We've got a lot of JRPGs coming out for the rest of this year and indeed 2023 as well, and just for you guys, before I go on holiday in December, I'll compile the releases I'm aware of in a video like I did at the start of 2022, so you can at least get an idea of what's coming up if you're not fully informed. However, with so many games coming out, we naturally want to play the ones that show promise, and thankfully demos exist for this very reason. I played 2 this week of games that caught my personal eye, and naturally I'll tell you what I think, and more importantly, whether I believe it will be worth your time and money. So the first I played was Valkyrie Elysium, the spin-off title from the mainline Valkyrie profile franchise, which is due out on the 29th of September. This was my first experience with a Valkyrie title. I don't have any nostalgia for the original, so I'm basically coming in with a blank slate on this one. It took me about 2 hours to complete and takes you through a tutorial level plus the first main stage. Valkyrie Elysium has a pretty simple premise. Odin fought Fenrir to a standstill, Ragnarok is upon the world, and now the Valkyrie must cleanse the souls of man, I guess in preparation for a new world. If you've played Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns, it's a similar concept to that. And without further ado, you are pushed into the world to do your saintly duty. So I'll start with the positive stuff. The combat is good. Honestly, if an action RPG can't get its gameplay right, you might as well give up then and there. Thankfully, that's not the case for this title. The Valkyrie has a wide array of options available to her: light attacks, aerial maneuvers, transitional moves, which are basically combo enders, and a tether ability to pull into enemies and traverse higher levels. Think of Adol's Monstrum gift in East 9, it's basically the same, just a bit slower. The combat does feel good though, you can juggle enemies well enough for the early game, though the inability to cancel attacks in between combos does take away a bit from the fluidity of the movement. But the Valkyrie also has her own unique abilities that she brings to the table. She has these minions, not even going to try to say the actual word because I'll butcher it for sure, but they will join her in battle, not to mention they have their own elemental specialty that the Valkyrie can draw on herself. Elemental weaknesses in themselves are a big part of this game, and if you focus on said weak points, you can crush the enemy into a stun lock. The Valkyrie also has divine arts that she can utilise as well, each with their own elemental base that function in the same way. There are also different weapons that have unique movesets and have their own effectiveness against certain enemies that can be upgraded too. In terms of progression on the character side, you have 3 separate skill trees that look to be quite linear outside of a minor branch here and there split into attack, defend and support. As the name suggests, the attack tree is based around new moves and flat increases for offensive stats, defense is based around perfect guards, evades and flat stat increases for defense minded stats, and support is based around utility like double jumps and the like. They look to stay linear all the way through, but obviously there's only so much that a demo can show. Overall though, combat and progression is solid as far as action RPGs go. Another highlight for me was the music. The 5 tracks that I heard for the demo sounded great. Sweeping orchestral renditions really fit the theme of this game. As long as it doesn't get repetitive the further the game goes on, then I think it's onto a winner on that front. The last positive point comes in level design. Now if I'm honest, I'm more indifferent to this than saying it's an outright positive because there's a fair amount of the hallway simulator going on too, but the level did open up at certain points as well, allowing for some exploration. The actual rewards for doing so weren't great to be honest, just the odd consumable. I would have preferred a new ability or weapon for those willing to go off the beaten path, but hey, it's fine from what I experienced. And that's the thing, if you're a player who just likes a competent action RPG, then I think you will enjoy what Valkyrie Elysium has to offer. I'm confident in its mechanics and fundamentals. However, I have to say as well that this game is really lacking in polish, and if you hadn't guessed, that's the segue to the negative stuff. First of all, the story. From what I've seen so far, it seems bare. Very little plot points opening up, the premise itself is simple. I won't go too hard on this one because it's just a demo obviously, but it needs to pick up the pace a bit narratively speaking. Next up is performance. I played on a PS4 Slim, which is the equivalent of a base PS4 in terms of hardware. It is outdated for sure, but this game does struggle to maintain a consistent frame rate on the platform. If you have the choice, I would say get it on PS5 or possibly even on PC if you have a decent enough system. I would take a chance on Square's shoddy record of PC ports and still believe it would be better than this. Also, the lip syncing is god awful. This is at the level of an early Godzilla dub. There is literally no matchup between what the character is saying and the movements of the mouth.
And I am left, gravely injured from battle, with that wicked wolf.
I don't even think it's a case of syncing. I think the lips on the character model just move and the sound clip is put on top. There's no effort to actually match them up. It's quite jarring to say the least. Maybe with the Japanese dub though, it could be better. Now, the next negative thing is going to be an encompassing point more than anything, and it's concerning the UI. The UI as a whole is shoddy. It's missing so many basic features that you would expect from a game in 2022. For example, as you go around levels, you can find so-called hollow blossoms, which are effectively the substitute for for NPCs. They give you small tidbits on the zone that you're in, and they also function to give a backstory to said area that you can piece together. These blossoms are marked on your map, which you access via the touchpad on the controller. Unfortunately, this is the only map you have. There is no mini-map available in this game, meaning if you want to find all these blossoms, you need to consistently draw yourself away from the action. A simple mini-map in the top right-hand corner alleviates the problem instantly. You glance at it, you correct your course, and you don't need to leave the game in order to do it. As for other areas of the UI that grinded my gears, well, the camera is far too close for me. I can't count the amount of times the Valkyrie got rammed up the split because I just didn't have a clue what was behind me. And no, there's no option to zoom out. Tutorials pop up a fair amount, which is fine. New mechanics do need to be explained, but the issue here is that they repeat themselves, several times in some cases. Next up are the side quests, and this is where my real worry with Valkyrie Elysium lies. In this game, you access the various levels via the astral globe, which you could find in the main hub. In here, you can choose to pursue the main story quest, or you can choose a side quest by accessing a sub-menu. You cannot complete a sub-quest within the same session you are in. The game needs to load a separate instance of that same level in order for you to complete it. For the first area alone, I had to revisit it 3 times, once for the main story and twice for the side quests that were available, and yes, there is backtracking involved. Again, a very simple fix here. There are crystals that you can access within these levels that act as a point to save the game, but also to upgrade weapons. Why could they not also function as a teleport too? That alleviates the backtracking problem immediately, and this is why I feel that Valkyrie Elysium, at least from what I played, runs the risk of being repetitive. Revisiting the same areas for different quests is not fun. Just have it all included in one fell swoop. It flows much better. Yeah, sure, maybe this gets introduced later on in the game, but the demo makes no indication that this mechanic will be in the full release. The final negative for me, and normally it's something I wouldn't even mention because graphics are not what make a game, but this art direction is odd. It's as if the character models are too well rendered versus the more washed out aesthetic of the world. There's this strange black outline that surrounds every model, and it just looks out of place, as if they were produced in 2 separate engines. I'm not sure if this was a conscious choice from the development team, but I'm not a fan personally. And that concludes my thoughts on the Valkyrie Elysium demo. If you're just a fan of action RPGs, I think you'll like it, but as a package overall, I'd say wait for a sale. From the 2 hours I played it, there's too many unpolished elements within the game that have me worrying for its full release, and personally, I don't think it's worth the asking price at present. Now on to the other demo I played, and it was for Star Ocean: The Divine Force, the 6th mainline title in the Star Ocean franchise and the return of Tri-Ace to the series after a hiatus of 6 years. Now, unlike Valkyrie Elysium, I have played a couple of Star Ocean games, SO4, which I actually enjoyed, and Integrity and Faithlessness, which I view as one of the worst games I've ever experienced. I don't care how many people try to convince me it's misunderstood. If a game makes you physically sick because of its awful camera, then it's bad. End of. Despite that though, I was really looking forward to Divine Force, and to be honest, I want it to succeed, because I feel that if this one fails, Square will just give up on the franchise and we'll probably never see another mainline Star Ocean title, so here's hoping. It's due out for October the 27th and took me just under 2 hours to complete, taking you through a few early areas before ending. Now, before we get into the game itself, it is worth mentioning that you can't transfer the save data from this demo to the full release. It is mentioned at the end of the demo too in small print, but I wanted to give you guys the heads up. Diving into the game now, Divine Force begins in a pretty good way, to be honest. Raymond, one of our protagonists, is the captain of a merchant ship that is shot down by a supposed friendly. He and his crew escape via pods and land on the 4th planet of the Asta star system, and Ray takes it upon himself to try and find his crew, who he hopes have also landed safely. Shortly after, he meets the second protagonist, Letitia, with her retainer, teams up, and the game begins. It was giving me Mass Effect 2 vibes. It got my attention immediately. Now, the first thing to mention here is the dual protagonist feature, and unfortunately, the demo only allowed us to play through the opening segment of Raymond's story. Letitia's was locked off. This was a bit strange to me. It makes me wonder whether this feature is going to be reminiscent of Tales of Xillia, where it didn't really hit the mark, or instead be more akin to, say, Scarlet Nexus, which had enough differences between the journeys to make them worth playing. This remains to be seen, but it did feel a little strange that we were locked off from one of the game's key features. That being said, what we got in Raymond's segment, at least for the time I played it, was great. First of all, Ray is a fun protag. I don't really care about his outward design or anything, it never bothered me, but his actual mannerisms and personality are solid. I also really dig the chemistry between the cast members. Ray comes from a civilization that houses technology that Letitia and her kin haven't even conceived in literature, and it lends to a really neat dynamic between them.
Ray, come in!
I knew you weren't alone. Show yourself!
Huh? Who in the hell are you? This isn't Raymond Lawrence!
Step into the light!
Hey, asshole. harm a single hair on my brother, and your planet's scorched earth. You hear me? Raymond, where are you?
How is this possible? This voice? I see no one.
Big ask, I know, but mind if I answer him real quick? After that, I swear, I'm all yours.
Very well.
Princess!
I hope this continues in the same way. It actually feels like two peoples that are worlds apart coming together and trying to understand one another. Up next is the music, and it is sick. The battle music was killer, loved it from the start, and I wanted to get into as many fights as possible to keep getting a dose. For the most part, I have fond memories of the battle music in Star Ocean titles, yes, even SO5, so I'm glad that Divine Force carries on the trend. Now, combat. It's quite interesting actually, but it's loaded with customization. Every character has a combo mapped to 3 of the buttons on the controller. You press the buttons in sequence, and as long as you have enough AP or ability points, you can see the combo through to the end. But then you can also link that combo to the next set you've set up if you have enough AP left over. These skills in themselves can be leveled up over time, plus there is a progression tree linked to each character that is massive, plenty of directions you can choose to go in. The word that sums up the combat and indeed progression in Divine Force is options. There's so many options available to the player to play in the way they want. You can also freely switch to any other character in the party lineup, and if you do find yourself in trouble, there's a stop mode that you can utilise to change up the strategy if you feel the need to. Equipment management is also there, and each character also has a variety of active, passive and combat skills that they can unlock as the game progresses, and once again it's on the player to choose which ones they want to use. For example, passive skills have to be set on the character as they don't activate automatically, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this develops further as combat becomes more complex. Despite this though, the combat itself feels really good. This is not a button masher. You need to plan around the AP you have, dodge at the right times, but you also have the blindside mechanic too. With the so-called VA, Ray can launch himself at an enemy, but if he changes direction at a certain point, he can blindside them and get a huge bonus of damage while also stunning them in place. This VA mechanic is also utilised in boss fights, where you're able to launch at the out of reach weak points for even greater damage. It's a really cool addition. And this in of itself translates to exploration as well. VA allows you to glide around, reach higher platforms, float down to inaccessible areas. It makes the zones feel alive. It's not truly open world, each zone is instanced off, but they feel large, and that's only a good thing with the options given to you. There's plenty to find, and you're often rewarded for doing so with new equipment and upgrade materials. I'll also mention that the world looks really nice, and I dare say on beefier hardware it would look better. Divine Force gives the option of prioritising frame rate or visuals, and I chose frame rate because again it was on a PS4 Slim, and yes, there is the odd lapse in FPS here and there, but it's manageable. However, if the game looks good with this option, then I can only imagine it will look better with the option that prioritises image quality. Finally, the live cutscenes return. These were the cutscenes that allowed the player control while a cutscene played in the background, which was a point of contention in SO5 because they were pretty much all over the place with very few traditional cutscenes in between. Divine Force thankfully though has a much better balance. There's way more traditional cutscenes on offer, and the live ones are sprinkled in areas where it doesn't take away from the action narrative, like just before departing a village or the like. Hopefully this also continues in the same vein for the full release. So those are the positives. Yes, I know a lot, but there were a couple of negatives that I experienced which I'll also share. Primarily, once again, the lip syncing is arse. I honestly thought there was a delay on my capture software, it was so far off. It might have been due to the platform I was playing on, but that opening cutscene was rough because of it. The mouths were moving a second after the words were audible. I've talked about the performance as well on PS4, the odd frame rate dip here and there, but it wasn't as bad as Valkyrie Elysium, at least not in my experience. And the last thing that came to mind were that some voice clips were overly compressed. You could hear them, but they kind of melded into the background noise at times. Maybe that was a design decision, but it was something I felt was worth mentioning. Other than that though, I have nothing else to say in a negative sense. I was pleasantly surprised with Divine Force. I was expecting to get burned again, but from what I've seen so far, I'm impressed. The game definitely has the odd frayed edge here and there, but the positives are miles ahead, and I am definitely buying this game when it fully releases. This one, at least from the demo, gets a thumbs up from me.